What happens in the sky affects life down here on Earth. The celestial compass shows you how and guides your way with astrology you can use from professional astrologer Kathy Biehl. Every episode features her light-hearted, practical forecasts and navigational tips, blended with humor, optimism, and a love of patterns, symbolism, and pop culture references. Kathy translates technicalities into concepts that apply to real life. You'll learn how the current moment ties to where we've been, from the recent past to cycles that last happened years ago, and get a look at where we're heading. And much more, from special topics to special guests. The Celestial Compass, enlightening, entertaining, and empowering. Here's your host, Kathy Biehl.
Greetings, Earthlings. This is Kathy Biehl of EmpowermentUnlimited.net, your host of Celestial Compass, and I'm going to start today with a brief update of the July forecast. We are this week moving out of the yummy, soft energy that we got to enjoy with the Cancer new moon into energies that are nudging us to do something about our situation. So we've experienced comfort, and now we will be addressing things that interfere with comfort. We have a full moon in Aquarius on the 23rd or 24th, depending on where you are on the planet. This is the friend zone of the sky, and it is the first status report we're going to be getting on the personal, emotional impact of the shoving match that Saturn and Uranus have been going through all year, stressing out systems, friendships, old ways against new ways, pushing us into innovation involving technology, and bringing a lot of fractures into relationships, and we will be purging in a non-emotional way. Your abiding image for this moon is Mr. Spock from Star Trek, or if you prefer, The Next Generation, Commander Data. Examining things, looking at it and going, interesting, fascinating, and doing something about it. Venus, which rules our social mode, will have just moved into Virgo, and that adds to a dispassionate, let's clean it up vibe to all of that. You will also find that Venus's move into Virgo orients everyone to looking at how they can do things better, making everyone revisit safety, healthy boundaries. Mask issues are going to come back up. The notion of just how much you want to socialize or not, being really discerning, discriminating. Next week, Mars also moves into Virgo, and he's in fix-it gene, fix-it mode in a big, big way. So also the other two big things to watch for are that Mercury will be in its third sign for the month, starting on the 27th. He will clear out of Cancer and move into Leo, and this will add more fieriness, more enthusiasm, more intuitiveness, more just expressiveness to communications, even as we're being more discerning with the Virgo influence growing. And Jupiter, which has been giving us coming attraction trailers of next year since the middle of May, Jupiter has been in Pisces, which is the sign he will be focusing on next year. On the 28th, Jupiter ducks back into Aquarius to finish up his time there for the rest of the year. So those are the big things going on. There will be more about it in my forecast for the Aquarius full moon, which will be up at OMTimes by the end of the week, and also at my site, EmpowermentUnlimited.net. And the July forecast is already up in both places. Okay, enough with what's going on in the sky. Now for today's special guest. Our guest is someone that I have been following on YouTube quite a bit in the last year, and I'm very pleased that she has agreed to come talk with us today. Dr. Victoria Scerbo has been a chiropractor since 1987, practicing in New Jersey and Massachusetts. A student of metaphysics since the early 90s, she's always been driven by the need to understand and get to the bottom of things. Her astrological studies began shortly after her first professional reading, almost 30 years ago. In 1999, in the shadow of the eclipse of the century, she met her Kabbalah teacher Linda Ward and began an apprenticeship in Kabbalistic Studies. She has been combining her knowledge of astrology with her Kabbalistic studies for 20 years, doing Kabbalistic Life Readings, which include Evolutionary Astrology with Numerology and Kabbalah. She has her own YouTube channel where she does daily astrological weather and monthly Kabbalistic pictures of the month ahead. Welcome, Dr. Vicky.
Hello, Kathy. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. I always like to start with my guests asking how you got interested in astrology. What was your journey into that?
Well, it's an interesting story. Going to school for so long, I think I started when I was 5. I finally got out of graduate school when I was 26. I didn't really have a lot of time to look into anything besides my studies. And the minute I graduated and became a chiropractor, I said, oh, good, now I get to study what I really am interested in. And I think that I've always sort of tried to figure out who exactly I was, which seems like a strange thing well, maybe not so strange for a fellow astrologer, right? But I had this sense that I wasn't being told the truth of who I was. And when I would ask, I had a inkling that I might have been adopted as a baby or as a child, or I just didn't look like anybody in my family. I didn't really think like anybody in my family, which is also not that unusual for people who study astrology. I think we're looking to find the planet that we came from somehow.
Yes.
But so, people were telling me who I was, and I'm like, I'm not really sure about this. And the first text I picked up was A Cosmic Science by Isabel Hickey, who's a very famous astrologer from the Boston area. And I read something about Neptune in the 4th house, and it said you could be adopted. And I was like, oh my God. So nobody was telling me who I was. So I said, well, if no one's going to tell me, then I'm going to have to find out some way. So that's how I started my astrological studies. After my first astrological reading by my first astrology teacher, Nancy Murdoch, she told me stuff about myself that I'm like, how does she know that? So I figured if she could know that, then I could maybe figure out who I was. And that's really what started me on this very oniony sort of, layer upon layer journey of astrology.
And did you take in-person classes, do a lot of reading? How did you go about it?
I was mostly self-taught initially, and then this astrologer, Nancy, said, hey, I'm doing a class. It's a more advanced class. I thought maybe you'd be interested in joining, and that was it. I took that class for a few years, mostly self-study, and then I studied. Then I had my Kabbalah teacher come in to my life, and I studied with her. And then while I was putting that all together, I started studying with an astrologer out of South Dakota called Kim Marie, who's one of the original students of Jeffrey Green. And I studied evolutionary astrology with her. She's amazing. She's Evolutionary Astrology Network is her thing. Yeah.
So how did the Kabbalah weave into this? How did you get introduced to that?
Well, I had a reading, actually. I had a Kabbalistic Life Reading with Linda. One of my friends said, oh, you have to get a reading with this woman. And I'm like, okay. And then when I saw what she was doing, I was like, I got to learn this. This is the next step. So, you know how it is, right?
Yes, I
It's like
do.
it's like a grand exploration. So I started to study with her, and when I was able to afford it, I did an internship with her. I had to go to Florida for a month, not a month, a week. It was a great week in Florida, but I was self-employed at the time, so, I'm still self-employed, actually. That hasn't changed in 30 years. But when you have your own practice, you have to, and you go on vacation, like, there's really nobody. It's you and
Yeah.
that's it. So you have to
Yes.
you have to save up double. So what would, like, because I never got a paid vacation ever, So I had to wait till I could actually afford to take the apprenticeship. But that's how I started. I started with her apprenticeship program, and then just developed it on my own, really. She gave me the basics. I did read about the Kabbalah even before I met Linda. I studied the Kabbalah. I studied the Alice Bailey work, Dane Rudger. The more obscure, the better it seemed for me. So I'm just always asking why and how come, and let's get to the root of things. I mean, that's the way I practiced my chiropractic. It's like, I'll listen to your symptoms, but we have to fix the problem. So, so I kind of approach astrology in the same way. Like, what is it that we have to work with here? What are going to be the problem areas? Where have you been injured, metaphorically or actually, or. So it's almost diagnostic in a way. And people like that, and some people don't. So not everybody likes you poking at their boo-boos. You know what I mean?
Yes. Can you? This is the hardest question I will ask you. Without talking for an hour, can you give some hint to people who are going, I've heard of this and I don't know what it is, about what the Kabbalah is?
Yeah, well, the Kabbalah is really, first of all, the word Kabbalah means to receive. And so the Kabbalah is the practice of working with the tree of life. Tree of life is a sort of a symbolic, like a diagram, and it's made up of 10 circles or sephira and the paths that connect them. And it's said that you can explain everything by looking at this symbol. And so you can utilize it with numerology, which is how I learned how to access it. And then you can also utilize it with astrology, because each part of the tree of life is associated with a planet or, and then a number. So in a way, it shows how everything is connected. And then you can also overlay the chakra system on it. And so you can actually see where people are energetically blocked via their astrology or via their numerology. And so it gives a more holistic perspective. And I think that, especially with astrology, it's so important, as you know, to have an accurate birth time. But so many people can't get that information. And what I find is the Kabbalah sort of fills in the spaces a little bit when you don't have an accurate birth time. So it can aid in that. But it's just I think, a deeper and more connected picture of, and in a way brings it down to a more personal level, and also it points out where the real issue lies. So
you would,
go ahead.
there would be correlations. You would take a person's birth chart and then see which circles have natal activity.
Yes. So
Okay.
if I could I give you an example?
Oh, please do.
All right, so I'll give you my chart as an example. So I have my whole life been searching for my identity. And in case of point, I was adopted. I was adopted when I was 11 months old, but nobody in my Sicilian Italian family let me know that because they didn't want me to, I guess, run away or whatever it was. And so my North Node in my chart is in the first house. And, of course, the North Node is the direction of your destiny, sort of what you're coming in to learn in this lifetime. And I'm like, I actually have come in to learn who I am. But I didn't know who I was because no one told me who I was. And when I said, I think I'm this person, they told me, no, you're not that person. When you look at my numerology and my Kabbalah, my shadow, which is one of the major numbers that you can get, is a 1, which is who I am, right? And it's located in my in a place on the tree of life called Tiphereth, which is associated with the heart chakra. Tiphereth is also the place of it's the place of childhood, and so I wasn't like the wound was so young because and my parents are actually very good to me, and I probably would never have been a doctor if I hadn't had my mother and father as my parents. So it's not a matter of not feeling loved because I always felt loved, but I didn't know who I was, and so that was reflected in that one wound that I had in my heart associated with my childhood. And I had
with that, we need to take a break, and we will come back to this in just a moment. So everybody, hang on. We'll be right back.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for inspired conversations with publisher Linda Joy on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Want help with your own celestial compass? Visit my site, empowermentunlimited.net, for Astro Insight forecasts for each week, month, and new and full moon. Want to explore the personal impact? Make a decision? Understand another person? It is possible. Click the Services tab to book a personal session with me. That address again? empowermentunlimited.net.
Coping 19, brought to you by CDC and the Ad Council.
If you're feeling increasingly lonely right now, you're not alone. It's totally normal. Even though we may not be able to get together in person, connecting virtually with friends and family still gives you a chance to interact with people and may help raise your spirits. Join a virtual book club, set up group text chats, or online video coffee breaks with coworkers.
Find more self-care and coping tips at coping-19.org.
Welcome back to Celestial Compass. This is Kathy Biehl, and we are talking today with Dr. Victoria Scerbo about the interplay between the Kabbalah and astrology. And right before the break, we were talking about what you discovered doing your own reading using the Kabbalah and your birth chart. And there had been an ongoing issue of identity, and you were just starting to talk about what you discovered about the heart.
Yes. So, in the way that I utilize the Kabbalah, I utilize it through its connection to astrology and its connection to numerology. And there is a way to discern where your wound is or where your shadow is. And I would define that as where your light is stuck. And for me, it was in my heart. And in the Kabbalah, that particular place on the Tree of Life is associated with childhood. And I was not told as a child who I really was. I was actually an adopted child. And even beyond that, I have found my birth mother, and I have to say that was a very healing experience for me, because for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was crazy, because I'm like, oh, I was right all along, which is always a nice thing.
Oh, yeah.
But in that healing of that identity, like, who am I? When I found out who I was from a biological perspective, it actually allowed me to really blossom when it came to what the work I'm here to do in this lifetime, which is considered your path of life vibration. And so it's just very interesting. And I'm talking about my own personal story, having a one shadow. But if I could just take it away, I'm not going to talk about me for a moment, but talk
Sure,
about
please.
somebody else that, if it's okay, somebody else. And I don't
Please.
really like talking about this person all that much, but our previous president, he also has a one shadow, right? And his one shadow is expressed in a different way, because as a one, you can be either you don't know who you are, or you're so convinced as who you are is that you end up having blinders. And his shadow is actually in a place on the Tree of Life called Hokmah, which is associated with the Father, and is located in the third eye.
There's no such thing as coincidence.
Right? So he can't see. He can't see because he's blind in that part. He doesn't see how what he does affects anyone. And of course, a wound of a one can definitely be narcissism, right? So it can go either way, but this is a way that you can utilize the Kabbalah. And, just what it really does is kind of what astrology does, is it just helps you understand people. It helps you understand yourself, and it helps you understand others. And it's so much easier to have compassion when you can see the pattern. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So someone could come with a specific question. Someone could just be open and learn aspects of themselves that perhaps they haven't consciously been able to
Right.
access. And then when you see, oh, this is my wound, huh? It would seem to me that in many cases, as it did in yours, you would have the epiphany of, oh, well, this makes sense, and you would know what to do with it. But do you sometimes end up having to guide people into what to do with the information? How to make use of it?
Yes, I often give them, just tips on how to work with this. Like somebody who has a shadow or a block in their third eye through the connection to the Tree of Life, you might give them some exercises to do, like to believe it, or you might say to somebody, who told you that you weren't seeing what you were seeing? You were seeing it, and they'll just look at you, and you'll be, so it can be life-changing. It certainly was life-changing for me when I had my first astrology reading, and then when I had my first Kabbalah reading. It really changed me. It shifted me in a way, because it's like you finally feel like you're being seen in a way for who you are. And it's just, it's a way to kind of read the web of life, sort of. And the nice thing about the Kabbalah with the astrology and the numerology, it's like a triangulation. So you're seeing these patterns over and over again. And then you know that that's the pattern that's going to be of issue. You know what I'm saying?
That's like in an astrological chart. If something is important, the chart will say it multiple times from multiple directions. So this sounds like with these three modalities, they all point to whatever they all point to tells you, okay, this is important.
Right.
Pay attention to this. Now, you could also give someone information about something other than, like, here's where you're wounded, right? I mean, there are other aspects of being.
Oh, yes. Where do your talents lie? What is it that you need to stay in good relationship in order to be at one with yourself, right? So there's a soul vibration, which is your inner feminine. There's an outer personality, which is your outer masculine. Those are things that come with you in the lifetime. So you can liken those to the position of Pluto and the position for the soul and the position of the South Node for that outer personality. So it's just another way to connect. And it just gives a little bit more, at least for me, it gives me a little bit more of a holistic perspective. You could probably find it with any of those modalities by themselves. But for me, I find it to be such a complete picture. And then you can give people ways of coping with that. And most people on a certain level know who they are. Mm-hmm. So it's just that I think a lot of people don't necessarily feel recognized for who they are. And I think go ahead.
No, I was going to say there's something very validating about going to a person, particularly a stranger, and and having them confirm what you've suspected or thought or how you were told you were nuts when you were young.
Right. You didn't see that. Yeah, you saw that. Yep. Mm-hmm. And there's you can get pretty deep and pretty personal with this stuff pretty quick. So it does take a certain amount of sensitivity. You have to be very sensitive to where people are at and what they're willing to hear. And I think that just comes with experience, because you don't always, in the beginning, you kind of, you're not always, I don't know, you sometimes say things and people look at you and you're like, oops, should I have said that so soon? But I don't know, have you had that experience as well?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. The silence and oops, you didn't really see that. Okay.
Yep.
I had one person who actually didn't get a reading from me, just someone that I worked with in theater who was scared to death that I could see to the depths of her soul. And I just look at her and go, not doing any peering, but all right. So some people can be very frightened of what you might see. It reflects more about them.
It does, and I found that being an astrologer never really did anything for my dating life.
Oh God!
Because they were terrified. Maybe it wasn't the astrology. Maybe I'm just using that as an excuse. But
well, that's another conversation. I have many stories in that arena. So segueing here, so you use these different modalities together for your private consultations, but you also use it in your forecasting. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so you can, of course, because of the connection of the Tree of Life with the astrology, and then the vibrations. So as an example, this year, 2021, the universal year is a 5, and 5 is about change. And the biggest thing happening this year is the Saturn-Uranus square, which is all about change, right? Mm-hmm. And the nature of the square that we're experiencing in very dynamic ways is one of questioning authority, right? It's a last quarter square between these two planets. And so it's a natural revolutionary time. And so you can add that to the picture in a way. So people know that the 5 is really about freedom, but it's about freedom based on responsibility, because if you're not responsible with your freedom, then it's just chaos. And so you can, sometimes the astrology is a little bit too dense for people, because you have to know what Saturn means, you have to know what Uranus means before you can understand, that dynamic. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people get, you know what I mean? So in a way, it can help to bring it a little bit more down to earth for people, I think, because you're using terms that they understand, freedom, responsibility, things like that. So, and so you can use them in forecasting, and that's what I do every month when I put out my monthly Kabbalah on my YouTube channel, just so people can sort of see, what's going on, the vibration of the year, the vibration of the month, how it interacts, and how the astrology reflects that. Of course, the 4 vibration is crisis. That was 2020. But it's also about, and it's associated on the Tree of Life. The 4 is also associated with an astrological sign. In the case of 4, it's Aries, and it's associated with the Emperor, which is about dominion. So you can also include the tarot with this. So you can access the vibrations with a tarot card as well. So for people who like tarot, you can say, this is the card you can this is your shadow, this is the card you can meditate on, this is your soul, this is the card you can associate with your soul. And then each of the Sephiroth is associated with a different sort of thing. In the case of the ex-president, his shadow is in the Sephiroth associated with Divine Father. And so when the shadow is in that place, the wound usually comes through the father. There's another Sephiroth associated with Divine Feminine. And so if the shadow is there, or if you even have one of your major numbers in there, there can be issue with mother. So it kind of depends on where it's at. And then, of course, you can add, when you add the chakras, you're getting an actual body picture. Like where your shadow lies can be a place where you can actually have physical malady. So for me, I have to be very careful of my heart, because that's where my shadow was. And if I were not to heal that, I might have symptoms in that area. So there's also that. So there's many different layers of how to, excuse me, as I cough, right? How to, it's just I don't know, it's just a great exploration. I get so much enjoyment out of doing it. It's, do what you love and love what you do. It's just, it's a gift.
So going back to your monthly forecasts, you actually, you do discuss the astrology, but you actually put up a chart of the tree of for every influence that you're discussing for the month, and you illustrate it.
I do, yes. Yeah, because it's illustrate. I mean, it's a diagram, so you're talking about it is one thing, but it's always easier if there's a picture, right? And then the picture so the words in the picture stimulate both sides of the brain. So it's a way of bringing it into your consciousness, through different ways of looking at it.
And then you also bring in the visually what chakras are involved with whatever you're talking about for that month.
That's right. Yep. Yeah, I try to have it be people learn in different ways, and some people, and also colors are important because there are colors associated with it. So it's like almost like a holistic or holographic way of looking at things just from all these different perspectives. So I I'm not sure I'm answering his question.
Well, I have heard, and since this is one area that I have not studied, so I've taken one course in the Kabbalah. That's it. I have heard that the pattern of the pentacles on the Ten of Pentacles in the tarot
Yeah.
actually is the tree of life.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll see in some of the decks, you'll see that, yes.
So that would be like the spiritual made manifest on the physical plane, possibly?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. There are 10 Sephiroth, the first one being the one associated with the crown chakra, our connection to spirit, our connection to the divine. And then the 10th Sephiroth is the one with the zero force. So it's the same. So the beginning and end are the same. It's just the manifestation of the divine in that 10th Sephiroth. And then the journey of how it expressed through the tree of life. It's sort of like a ladder. It's almost like coming up and down the ladder. I'm not sure I'm being clear, but.
Well, I think this is a good spot for us to take our second break, and we can come back to this in a couple of minutes. So hang on, everybody. Please stay with us.
Bringing a more conscious lifestyle to your world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
How would you like navigational tools you can use on your own? Visit my site, empowermentunlimited.net, and click the Shop tab. There you'll find lots of talks and guides explaining the big influences at work now, like Saturn in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus. You'll also find a variety of guided visualizations for relaxing, clearing your energy, or getting to know planetary archetypes. That address again, empowermentunlimited.net.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
If I could be you,
and you could be me,
for just 1 hour.
if you could find a way
To get inside.
each other's mind.
walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
We've all felt left out, and for some, that feeling lasts more than a moment. We can change that. Learn how at belongingbeginswithus.org, brought to you by the Ad Council.
Walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back to Celestial Compass. Today we're talking about astrology and the Kabbalah with Dr. Victoria Scerbo. And actually we're talking about a lot more than that. It seems to me that, okay, you've been saying that you use astrology and numerology and the Kabbalah, and in your monthly forecast you'll even work in some of the tarot correspondences to provide information. And it's been my observation over the decades that there are many modalities, there are many paths to the same information. It's just a question of what resonates with you. Numerology for some people, palmistry for some people. But if something is a truth, it's going to be the truth no matter what tool you use to get to it. Been my experience.
That's right.
I don't know if that's been yours. Okay.
That's absolutely been my experience. Yep.
And it sounds like you have many, many tricks in your bag that you have figured out ways to weave together and work together. If someone's interest is sparked by this, how would you suggest they go about learning more? Finding a center, finding a teacher? What would you suggest?
Well, it's interesting because this. I had Linda Ward as my Kabbalah teacher, and I've been saying to Linda for 20 years now, when you're going to write that book, Linda, when you're going to write that book. So there's really actually no one thing that sort of connects all these things. So it has been for me a series of explorations into these different modalities, and then sort of in my own experience doing the readings to sort of bring it all together. I do teach a Kabbalah course. It's for beginners, and I also teach astrology. But there are many great astrology teachers out there. If you want to know evolutionary astrology, the Evolutionary Astrology Network is great, or the Pluto School. I mean, it's out there, but there's really no one place that brings it all together that I'm aware of besides myself. I'm sure there are people out there, but I have yet to meet them. So I would say you could take a class with me, but there's also, good Kabbalah classes out there as well. But it is, it's something that is yet to come together in the way that I would say there's something complete out there to understand. That's what I would say.
I went looking, and I certainly was stunned at how little I could find about this, given how you can find, a TV show from 1969 that aired once. You can find it online. So there's just really not a lot of information about this.
There's not. And the thing with the Kabbalah is that the more you interact with it, the more it reveals to you. So you're actually it's like being in a relationship. The more effort and interaction you put with it, the more you get out of it. And so I'm still, 20 years in, I'm still figuring things out and seeing things. I mean, there are great Kabbalah books out there. There are different, the Kabbalah, sort of the way that I learned it through the numerology, is the Kabbalah is more of the sort of Western occult tradition of the Kabbalah, as opposed to the Jewish tradition of Kabbalah, although I've read some of those books as well. There's any book by Halevi is great. He does a beautiful job with it. But there are different sort of Kabbalah sects as well. So there's the information's out there, but it's very obscure, and it's not always that easy to understand. So I guess I have a little work ahead of me to try to, put it in a more understandable way, a practical way for people, because it's a great tool. It certainly helps me. It's just a matter of, finding the time to do it, I guess.
It does. I was going to say, and your book on this is when?
I know. Right. Well, as you know, and not everybody, of course, is listening to this knows, I've been taking care of my mother for the last 17 years. So now that is starting to wane for me, and other people are going to be taking care of her. So I'll have more time. Hopefully I can bring, or I can still try to convince my teacher to write something. But I probably better off just do it myself.
Well, what you have to say, your teacher can write a book too. I mean, how you have assimilated all of this could be very, very useful. A couple of questions. One, going back, could you explain to people what evolutionary astrology is?
Yeah, so evolutionary astrology is the study of the evolution of the soul that is sort of reflected in the chart. And it's mostly, the evolutionary astrologers work mostly with Pluto and the nodes of the moon just called the karmic axis. And so you can, and there's great evolutionary astrologers out there, amazing people. Jeff Green sort of came up with this idea when he was, the story is that he was going to prove astrology didn't work. And so when he started looking into it, he realized that, it was kind of the key to the kingdom, which actually some of the greatest astrologers out there got into astrology to disprove it. And of course they realized that, well, no, no, astrology works. It's real. It's there. It gives us information that you can't really get other places. But he actually meditated and got a lot of his information through meditation. So, which is very interesting. And he wrote the book, Pluto, the Evolutionary Journey of the Soul, which is, of course, one of those it's a deep and it's an arduous book to get through, but it is, and I had it for I think 10 or 15 years before I actually took the Evolutionary Astrology with Kim Marie, and then suddenly it made sense. I don't know if this has happened to you, but you buy a book and you read it and you're like, what the heck are they talking about? And then 10 years later you pick it up again and you understand everything in it. So it's almost like you have to get to that vibrational place or something, or a level of understanding so you can understand the depth of it. But so we have this in evolutionary astrology, we have multiple lifetimes in which the soul is evolving. And the chart is a key to that, and where your Pluto is and what generation your Pluto is in. And then how it interacts with the nodes of the moon and the karmic axis. It's fascinating. I even took a past life regression course with an evolutionary astrologer, Patricia Walsh. I don't know if you know Patricia or if you've heard of her. She has a great book out, Understanding Karmic Complexes, which I would suggest for anybody, even if you're not an astrologer. It's fascinating. And she's done past life regressions and looked at the chart and has seen the patterns. And this is in people who don't know anything about astrology. So it's not like you look at your chart and you say, oh, I think I had a past life as Cleopatra. It's here on my chart. No, you go through it's just fascinating. And that's something else. It's another little piece of the puzzle where you go, oh my God, I think we're onto something here, right? It's like pulling a thread on an Afghan or something, and everything starts to unravel. But in that unraveling process, you just understand things about yourself, and why things happen the way they do, and the fact that we're all sort of evolving together here through our Pluto and Capricorn, right? I mean, that's what it's in now, and we have been evolving through the polarity point of Pluto, which is in Cancer. We've had to learn how to become emotionally self-reliant. We can't depend on daddy anymore, right? Because daddy is the whole patriarchal stuff. And it's just fascinating. I mean, I could go on, and I probably meandered off the path there for a minute, but
that's
it's just
perfectly
so
fine.
Fascinating.
I agree. Well, metaphor is a living thing, and astrology is one way to access it. And you see, oh, okay, archetypes are among us, and they're working all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. So one other thing, doubling back, when you say you have classes, are they in-person classes, or do you teach online?
Well, I used to do in-person classes, and then COVID hit, and then I had to learn how to do online classes, which is a whole different thing. You need a lot more prep work when you're doing the online classes. But I do mostly at this time. It's mostly online, and the nice thing about that is you can be anywhere and take a class. Right? You can be in Australia. I've had students in Australia and in England, and so it's kind of neat in that way. And the nice thing about that for me is I find that I'll have these classes, and the people in the classes make connections with each other. And it's almost like we're lighting the web up, that the cosmic, what is it, the Christ the Christ grid or something. I feel like we're all these little lights making these connections, just like, coming onto your show is like making a connection. Somebody will hear it that needs to hear it, and that'll be one more light that's turned on, right? I mean, I think that's what we're here to do. We're here to shine our light. And and access our co-creative abilities. I mean, we can create miracles just by the way we connect with each other. And you can see that in the astrology, you can see it in the Kabbalah, you can see it in the numbers. And we can really change things. When it looks, I think, like there's nothing we can do because, like, fate is going to, just blow us off the face of the earth, we can change things through our energy. And I think more and more people are becoming aware of their true power. And I think astrology and the Kabbalah are, two ways of accessing that. Know thyself, right? Know thyself.
And I think that the Saturn-Uranus square has actually played a huge role in that because it has built interesting little communities online doing all kinds of different things that have evolved into real, actual, emotional, supportive connections. And it's fascinating to watch how that's happening. So that's one. There is actually a benefit to technology. I have seen.
Yeah. I was having that conversation with somebody today, maybe. About that. Like, technology really, you can use it for, the internet. I think I was talking about the internet. I mean, it's good and it can be terrible, but, so can life. What are you going to focus on? Like, where your attention goes, the energy flows. So, focus on that which brings peace and love and harmony into your heart. I mean, that is the greatest gift you can give to the world, living a well-lived, what is that expression of a life from, I don't know.
A life well lived. Anyway, you just radiate your own your little light will go to somebody else's little light, will go to somebody else's little light, and it spreads. Right. It spreads like the midnight church service on Christmas Eve. I know I'm eliminating some people with this reference. I apologize, but it really works. Where everyone has their little bitty candles, and it starts in the back of the church, and you just pass the flame on, and by the end of it, the entire chapel is just brilliantly lit by individual candlelight. That's what I have seen happening. Yeah. Before we go, I'd like you to tell us about the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center.
Yes. So
that's your business.
That's our business. I'm here with my husband, Michael. He is a energy healer. He was a massage therapist, trained as a massage therapist, and got into first Reiki, and then he got into reconnection. Actually, we both did the reconnection. And then he had Uranus sit on his sun in Aries, and he had a seizure. And through the process of healing from that experience, he actually had information channeled through him. So he does his own sort of brand of energy healing. So he does that. I do my astrology and my Kabbalah. Occasionally we'll see, chiropractic clients or craniosacral clients. But we're here and we're him. And, we have you can certainly come to visit us here if you want. But now that we're online, we have, I think, a little bit of a greater reach to affect people. And most of the healing that he does remotely. He's healed people all over the world. And, it's an exciting time to be a healer, I think. And so, we have this little place. And if you look every morning, I walk through the garden, which is beautiful now in the middle of winter. People wonder why I'm walking through the brown sticks, but, it still has its own beauty. But I think it's
and this is on your YouTube channel. So for people to understand, you walk around on your YouTube channel.
Yes, I walk around. So if you go to Victoria Scerbo at my YouTube channel, you'll see every morning I come out. We see what flowers came out, what little critters are around. Sometimes funny things happen. Sometimes miraculous things happen. But it's a little bit of astrology and a little bit of, folksy knowledge, I guess. Although I would never have considered myself folksy before this. But it's really, it's a way to share, our home and our place with the world in a way that, and then of course you can always come visit because it's a lovely little spot. And we're close to Cape Cod.
In Massachusetts, everyone. All right. And your website is theseedsoftransformation.com?
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you very, very much for joining me and explaining all of this. I'm sure I'll be getting a lot of feedback from people, and I will certainly pass it on to you. Everyone, there's a daily astrology forecast, and then also a lot of interesting political stuff, and a monthly forecast, which is it uses the different approaches that we talked about here. And I'm Kathy Biehl, and you can find me at empowermentunlimited.net, and my forecasts are also at OMTimes. Talk to you in 2 weeks. Bye.